If you could make one wish come true, what would it be? Whatever the answer is, it's probably for the pursuit of happiness, or, if you want to be crude about it, self-interest. And that's exactly why some people should never get their wish. A goddess asks a boy named Hoshimiya Eiji what he wishes for. At the hospital, a girl named Hoshimiya Sena calls his attention and asks what's wrong. He apologizes for spacing out, then prepares to go home. 6 more months to keep quiet, he ominously tells himself. The following day, Eiji's teacher gives a lecture on how the world was nearly annihilated in the Great Destruction 10 years ago. During the same period over which this catastrophe took place, the world also saw the appearance of orders. An order is capable of turning one's wish into great power. Currently, there are around 2,000 orders worldwide. As a result, it is hypothesized that the tragedy was born out of one's wish to end the world. Suddenly, Eiji stands up in the middle of class and excuses himself as he feels ill. His classmates have already seen this coming and laugh, because being sick is totally funny. They then gossip in the class group chat about how Eiji rarely attends class. What kind of people talk smack in a GC with the target in it though? The boy, on the other hand, believes his reasons are valid. He really did feel ill. Why? It's because the Great Destruction 10 years ago was caused by his very own wish. This means that he's an order, and orders are despised in society since they're perceived to be evil, frightening beings. There are even hate rallies against them. What more against one that caused an apocalyptic event? This is why he's hidden his secret all this time. He goes home to a woman floating in his bedroom. Her name's Daisy, and seeing her there annoys him for some reason. It's been 10 years since he first met her. She's a being who can turn wishes into supernatural power. When he asks if she just created more orders, she nonchalantly replies that it's her job. Daisy asks him why he still hasn't used his power after so long. It appears our MC can destroy the world, although he's not willing to try again. Does what happened to his little sister Senna still upset him? In an attempt to ease his guilt, the goddess reassures him that he technically didn't wish for world destruction all those years ago. Then what is his power? Nada. She won't say. She simply looks forward to the day he'll use his power once again. And with that, she vanishes into thin air. This conversation leaves him feeling puzzled. Wasn't world destruction what he wished for that day 10 years ago, inspired by his favorite cartoon character, the Evil Ranger? His conscience still haunts him. So basically, the world fell apart because a child emulated a villain. That's wild. He pays Senna another visit at the hospital but ends up falling asleep by her bed. His consciousness returns when she gently wakes him up and asks for fun school life stories. To keep her from worrying, he flaunts that he's having fun and even shares his imaginary girlfriends. Sadly, even she doesn't fall for it, but she's looking forward to living her own student life. Just as the siblings share an emotional moment, Evil Ranger comes up on the TV. Eiji cringes at the sight and changes the channel. Out of nowhere, his little sister asks, "Are you in order?" This startles him. He gets all defensive and acts sus. Her serious expression turns into a smile. What she meant to ask was that if he were in order, what would he wish for? His answer is sweet, for her to recover so she can leave the hospital. In turn, hers is to stay with him forever and for their parents to return to life. Aww, good girls get 2 wishes, not just one. The next day at school, a pretty transfer student named Kurenai Rin is introduced to the class. Her looks attract everyone's attention, including Eiji's. The school day goes on and ends just like any other one, and he's now unlocking his apartment door. A familiar voice calls out, "It's Rin?" She asks for a favor and all sorts of thoughts enter his mind. Is it time to get some action? Yeah, nope. She moved into the nearby unit, but her key broke. She doesn't have her phone with her, so she asks if he can call her a locksmith. As he turns around to help her out, she suddenly zaps him with a taser. Bang! He blacks out and drops. When Eiji wakes up, his hands are tied with a rope. The supposed cutie reintroduces herself as Kurenai Rin, an assassin sent to eliminate him. This is revenge for being the order who destroyed the world 10 years ago. Her beloved parents gruesomely perished in a fire at the time, and she's finally been led to the perpetrator. He's obviously terrified and worried about his safety. Rin unsheathes her sword and mercilessly impales his hand with it. Blood rushes out of the wound. As she lifts her weapon once again for the final blow, an eye-like symbol glows on Eiji's outstretched hand. The sword she was previously holding is now lodged halfway in her midsection. Out of fear and confusion, Eiji flees from the apartment. apartment. After some time, he finds a shrine to hide in and breaks down in a state of panic. His thoughts are a mess since his powers have caused harm to another person again. Should he call the police on himself? However, the last thing he wants is for people to discover that he's an order. With time running out, he feels a deathly presence behind him. A helicopter flies high in the skies above. In it is a gaudily dressed man named Lieutenant Frank. He laments Rin's insubordination to orders since she tried to harm the target of their recon mission. The news of Rin's failure travels quickly to an exclusive boardroom with powerful figures. It's Lieutenant Frank's turn to make contact with AG. These people don't seem too happy about sending youngsters to deal with a catastrophe like him. The hiding AG pulls out his phone to call Senna on the phone. Hearing her voice calms him down, and he promises to drop by within a day to say hi. Maybe he'll have his wounds checked out too. When he arrives at the hospital, it's suspiciously empty. Suddenly, his dear sister appears in a wheelchair being pushed by Rin? She's alive? The elevator doors open to reveal military personnel pointing their guns at him. The two enter the elevator, with Rin revealing that she's taken Senna as hostage. It's the chink in his armor of invincibility. To prove her seriousness, Rin stabs Senna's shoulders. The poor girl loses too much blood and falls unconscious. That's just dirty. Two soldiers are left behind to end AG's life. They're a bit hesitant since he's just a kid, but it's too late now. The Order loses himself in rage, and all we hear are shrieks of horror. AG wakes up in the basement where Daisy is calling for his attention. She reassures him that his power didn't spiral out of control. The soldiers are injured, but it's nothing lethal. Daisy shares that Rin is an Order too. 10 years ago, Kurenai Rin lost her parents in a fire and she suffered lethal burns as well. As she lay on the verge of death, she wished for her own regeneration. That's why she's now immortal. When asked why she reappeared before AG, she explains that she's looking forward to him using his powers. It would be a shame to forget the wish he had made back then. It appears he did just that, although we suspect that supernatural forces are keeping him from recalling it. Putting this matter aside, he contemplates saving Senna first. To achieve this, Daisy takes his left hand and limits his power output to a 10,000 of its potential. Talk about OP. It should allow him to safely use his powers without losing control, like 10 years ago. AG doesn't want to use his powers anymore, but he'll do anything to save his dear sibling. He emerges in an underground parking lot where he is spotted by a unit of soldiers. The lights flicker as AG emits a sinister aura. Oh no. Our empowered MC finally makes it to the main house where Rin is keeping Senna captive. An entire platoon of skilled gunmen are ready to fire. For some reason, AG recalls why he loved the show Evil Ranger so much as a kid. The character's goal was to bring peace through world domination. It was a method often criticized by others, but the means justify the ends. He finally remembers his wish from back then. It was to rule the world. Wow. Rin smugly gives the gunners the green light. Bullets rain down like a hailstorm. After a while, she signals the gunners to stop as she wants his life to end by her blade. Shockingly, AG comes out unscathed. Her body is also moving on its own to heal Senna's injury. Hell yeah! It turns out that AG's power as an Order is to bend everything according to his will. Anything within his domain, whether people or objects, is his to control and manipulate. This is a 10,000th? Rin fires her gun in a desperate bid to defeat him, but her actions are futile. AG's dominance transcends all laws, even those of physics. He never wanted to use his power, but now that she's forced his hand, she'll be the first person to submit to his will, and definitely not the last. Memories of Rin's life flash before her eyes. AG angrily forbids her from leaving the domain for her entire lifetime with his power. Also, she will never be able to harm him or Senna. Infuriated by this disgrace, she swings her sword only for it to stop just short of his body. Her frustration for never being able to avenge her parents is apparent. AG cools off and tries to reassure her that even if she can't exact revenge, there should be more worthwhile pursuits like going after her dreams or meeting new people. Falling in love sounds good too, but she's not too keen on the idea. Nervous, AG accidentally slips up and asks her to marry him. Smooth operator. Before he can correct himself, she accepts his proposal since staying close might give her a chance to eliminate him someday. What? This is when Lieutenant Abraham Louis Frank comes into the scene to take Senna with him. He uses his power as an order and stops time, dismantling AG in the process. They are taken to the Dazaifu city government office. AG wakes up in a cell with a full body restraint on. We tried googling what you call it exactly, but the results weren't PG-13. Rin arrives to free him from his shackles. For some reason, she acts like a friend. Is this the fiancé effect? According to her, they're under the Dazaifu city government office. There's a long line of unconscious guards on the floor. It's apparently her doing. She explains that she's only helping him as she's entitled to the sheer pressure of being the one to end his life. AG is reminded that she's a vicious enemy who just happens to be under his domination. Daisy confirms that Lieutenant Frank is an order with the power to stop time. Rin and AG are now crawling through air vents in order to escape, but there's actually another reason why she chose that escape route. What if ricocheting the bullets off the walls instead of directly firing at him can overrule the domination? As AG complains about the darkness, she visualizes a trajectory toward him and fires at the narrow walls. Boink, 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 flop. The plan backfires as the bullet boomerangs back and penetrates her skull. Since she's immortal, her auto-heal lights up the tunnel. The oblivious AG is relieved that they finally have a light source, but he knows something sus is up. She then leads him to a dangerous pathway suspended high up in the air, indicating that it's the only way to their goal. Her elaborate plan this time is to let him fall by himself without her direct involvement. Sadly, it's her who slips up and respawns at the bottom. Her plans become increasingly obvious as she's chosen the most hazardous way out, riddled with the facility's deadliest traps. Surprisingly, she's the one who repeatedly falls victim to these and has to resurrect every time. Good as new. The jig is up though. AG simply asks her to give up on trying to assassinate him. The only reason he's bound her to his domain anyway is because it's impossible to deal with an immortal assassin. However, as she brings a dead guardian back to life, she mentions that she doesn't want to run from a challenge. The two decide to call each other by their first names. Rin hugs him and says, "That reminds me, your third domination was marrying me, wasn't it? But I won't let you dominate my heart as well." With his man-bits in the palm of her hands, she squeezes them with a deathly grip. The system registers it as pleasure and not as pain for some odd reason. AG, what are you into? Finally, they arrive at the exit where the path forks into two. One is to safety and the other is to the office where Senna is being kept captive by Frank. AG chooses a ladder without hesitation. After all, he can't forget about her wish. 10 years ago, his divorced father married a similarly divorced woman. He didn't want to call the woman mother, nor did he have any interest in Senna, the woman's child. He only paid her visits at the hospital since it was better than staying at home. Despite this, Senna was always genuinely happy to have him as her older brother, but his wish from 10 years ago destroyed this happy life. Anger wells up on his face as he exclaims that he could have hidden the truth from her just a bit longer, but they all messed it up. This also makes Rin mad. After killing others, I can't believe you tried to conceal your sins. You think I'll ever forgive that? He reveals that Senna has a blood disease and has less than 6 months to live. It was his plan to have her live a peaceful life without ever discovering her beloved brother's nasty secret. He wouldn't have cared what would happen to him after her passing. Because of this lengthy conversation, the guards finally catch up to them. AG uses his power to apprehend their pursuers and heads for the door to the office. Rin threatens to stop him since he'll definitely lose his life. AG doesn't waver. Since Frank's power is stopping time, it's a bad matchup for him. The weakness to the lieutenant's power is that it can only suspend 3 objects at once. With her strategic help, it might just be possible. The right to end his life is no one else's but hers after all. The pair easily defeat the guards in their way. The real challenge starts when they arrive at the room where Frank has been eagerly awaiting their arrival. A sleeping Senna is suspended mid-air at the other end. Rin throws 3 grenades thinking that Frank will exhaust his power to stop these from exploding, but he doesn't. Now the duo's desperate strategy is compromised. The 2 men rush in. Whoever stops the grenades will lose in combat to the other, but if neither of them stops it, then they're both mush. Just as a decisive moment arrives, another order appears to cause a stalemate and a peaceful ceasefire. The man announces his ability to forcibly halt all aggressive action, sleeping sheep. Suddenly, a crowd of people drop into the room. The stunned AG is now greatly outnumbered. Rin warns him not to move since these people are the Dazaifu city government office's top top leaders and are all orders. A large man looms before him, saying his name and gently putting his hand on his shoulder. He announces that AG has passed. The other leaders all clap their hands in unison. What's happening? Another man calls him AG-sama and praises the splendid fight. They reintroduce themselves as the Dazaifu City Government Office's group of 10. The group's first hand, Fuwaraido. Second hand, Narukami Benkei. Third hand, Hiragi Yoshitsune. Fourth hand, Io. Fifth hand, Nehara Taike. Sixth hand, Loren Wright. Seventh hand, Somoko Kokodu. Eighth hand, Minamoto Nene. Ninth hand, Konomari. And 10th hand, Sundan Ayahito. Yoshitsune leads AG to Senna, who's asleep in a glass container. He tells him not to worry since the advancement of her illness is currently being halted by one of Lieutenant Frank's time stops. Originally, they never wanted to do him any harm, but this was also a good opportunity to test him as well. AG asks what he means by this. Apparently, 10 years ago, a result of the great destruction he caused was Japan losing its ability to function as a nation. Thus, they were placed under the UN Interim Governance Mechanism's rule. The designated headquarters for Kyushu is the Dazaifu City Government Office. However, they believe that destruction is also part of the new world's creation. The old human world is at an end, and a new world is beginning. As orders, they're tasked with leading this new world. Just a few days prior, fourth hand Io's divination discovered AG. Yoshitsune concludes his pitch by asking AG to have them help him in forming a new world for him and his sister, healing her illness in the process. They've already begun by declaring Kyushu as an independent nation with AG as its king. Right after the nation was founded, it declared war on the entire world. Wow, our newfound king can't find the words to describe his predicament. An outraged Rin is now being dragged away back to prison. She protests his election as king, but no one listens. Confused about all this, AG asks what would happen if he were to refuse. Yoshitsune explains that he's free to do so, but that would mean war against the world all by himself. After all, they've already publicized his role in the Great Destruction. They make the deal even sweeter. If AG accepts, they might be able to find an order who can cure Senna's illness. In exchange, he will become king of the new world and the group of 10's puppet. All this guy wanted in the past was to live a quiet life with his little sister Senna, but now it appears that he doesn't have much of a choice. He's gonna have to rule the world for real. Gathering all of his mental fortitude and inner strength, he calls on his power to bind the group of 10 to his domain. They all bow before him and are pieced in the forehead or the heart. Well, except that one girl at the end, but let's ignore that. It's a long and winding road, and our MC has been reborn as a king of kings. Maybe this is the best path to achieve his and his dear little sister's happiness.